What's up everybody, this is FlamingVictini and I'm bringing you TDK versus Shoka. This is game 1 and they decided to lead off with DBP. I was actually expecting them to start this series with DPP. And TDK led off with his Heatran as Shoka led off with his Infernape. And Shoka went straight for the close combat and OHKO'd that Heatran, so that gave a really poor start to TDK. TDK went out to his Rotom Wash. It is a Rotom Wash, but it's not water electric. It is Ghost Electric. And then he doubled out into his Breloom as Shoka brought in his Shaman on that Rotom. Now, I'm not too sure. I'm not too experienced with what Shaman like to run in DPP, but I'm thinking that Breloom can't hurt this Shaman much more than with like a superpower or something of those sorts. So I'm not too completely sure what TDK would want to do to respond to this Shaman. It could have HP Ice, so something like a Dragonite would not really be very good against. Oh my god. Shaman goes for the HP, I'm guessing Fire or Ice, and KOs that Breloom, and this is a very poor start for TDK. If he can win this game, I'll be really surprised, because he has lost 2 Pokemon in the first 3 turns. And this is looking pretty sad for him. I'm gonna switch sides just because I think it looks nicer. But oh, I changed the background too. But yeah, I don't know how TDK is gonna recover from this. Shoka has revealed 2 of his Pokemon only, and has gotten 2 kills in the first 3 turns. And TDK is also already gonna have to reveal one of his last 3 mons that haven't been revealed, while already being down 2 mons. I think TDK was trying to be a little aggressive, or didn't think the Shaman had a hidden power that would do so much, but that knocked out that Heatran so quickly. I got really surprised, but I guess Shaman is just really strong. It is a pretty good mon. Yeah, but TDK brings in his Bronzong. I think he should have brought this in on the Shaman. He definitely should not have left his Breloom in the sack, and I think leaving his Heatran on the close comp is going to hurt. But Shoka brings back in the Infernape. I guess the reason TDK might have stayed in with his Heatran was expecting Rocks, or pretty much just expecting Rocks. I think is why he stayed in. If this is still a Sash Ape, then I guess Bronzong could Earthquake this Infernape here, and then it could take a hit and Fire Blast this Bronzong, or overheat it. Or I guess even Flare Blitz, although Flare Blitz is a fire move in general, but if it's not Sash, then this Bronzong could be very threatening to Shoka. I'm gonna presume that Shoka definitely has at least one ground immunity. He might be a Flygon. Yeah, I could see Flygon on this team, although Shoka hasn't revealed too much. TDK's team, I could see Dragonite Bantar or something like that, but or this Bronzong could have Psychic coverage, although usually it's Trick Room, Gyro Ball, Earthquake, and Explosion. I think I might have a team similar to TDK somewhere in my team builder, but probably don't even remember where I got it from. But TDK is taking his time here, I guess, trying to weigh the options of whether he should go for the Earthquake right here or switch, and he does switch out into his Rotom as Shoka brings in his own Rotom. Yep, that's also works as a ground immunity and can do pretty well against Bronzong in general. Although I guess if TDK did go for the Gyro Ball on that Rotom, and this was also a Scarf Rotom, and there was like a Iron Ball Gyro Ball, then that could have done a ton of damage and helped Bronzong later on in the game. But looking at this mirror matchup, I feel like I feel like they both might be Scarf. Yeah, TDK does bring in the T-Tar, as Shoka brings in his Heatran, so both of them are like not wanting to risk a Shadow Ball right there. But I think TDK comes out in this situation. T-Tar does pretty well against Heatran, especially when it can go first. And if this is banded, he can go for a Stone Edge or Superpower. And I don't know, I'm expecting TDK's last to be a Dragonite. I don't know, I just feel like it would be. 4 attacks Mixed Knight is pretty good on Trick Room. And Shoka's team, I'm not too sure about. But I guess, it's a little tricky. I don't know what he would have as a Stone Edge resist. He hasn't revealed anything that can comfortably take a Stone Edge at this point, especially for the ban. This could also be like a Choppletar, or, I don't know. I think the Trick Room band is used, and I think there's one other set that's often used on Trick Room. Well, this TDK's team is not a full Trick Room team. I should make that clear. In DPP, most of the Trick Room teams I see are mostly just like Bronzong, plus stuff that works well in the Trick Room and has good synergy with Bronzong, and stuff that stuff that can function outside of Trick Room is also good usually. But TDK goes for that Stone Edge on that Shaman, and I want to calc that Stone Edge damage for sure. So probably make this DPP calc. And Tyranitar, I'm going to say OU Choice Band versus Shaman, OU Special Attacker. And yeah, that is definitely banded Tyranitar. So Shoka brings in the Machamp, and ooh, this is gonna be tough, because Shoka could go for the payback as TDK tries to bring his Rotom on a predicted Dynamic Punch. Shoka could also go for the Dynamic Punch, expecting TDK to be wary about bringing in his Rotom on a payback. A lot of things can happen here, but I think TDK's main, I feel as if TDK can win this game. If he can weaken this Machamp, he can win with Tyranitar and Trick Room, and if he can, I guess, weaken the Rotom, he can win with Bronzong as well. So Shoka has to play his Rotom really smart, because he needs it to take Gyro Balls and Earthquakes, as well as Explosions for that matter, although I don't think TDK would explode. Not even this entire game, he might not, unless he wants to go Trick Room and then explode and then get back stuff. But oh my god. So I'm not too knowledgeable about Machamp sets besides the lead set, but Shoka actually goes for the substitute, and that's pretty interesting. That's going to be pretty tough for TDK, because now Shoka can just safely do whatever he wants. So yeah, TDK is forced to break that sub with the Thunderbolt, and Shoka can just go for the payback and kill off that Rotom basically. And the thing is, if TDK's last is Dragonite, it depends on Shoka's last, but if TDK can somehow play Trick Room extremely well, then if TDK can play his Trick Room really well, then he can win. But I think Shoka has 5 mons in this situation, and one of them is also unrevealed. Plus he has ways to try to waste turns, so TDK goes into his Bronzong. I think right here he might have to take a Dynamic Punch and then hope that he doesn't get confused. And in that case, he might, there's the Dynamic Punch, and TDK does not get confused and goes for the Trick Room. Now right here, he could go for the Gyro Ball. I think, yeah, he goes for the Gyro Ball on the Machamp, and that is not enough to KO the Machamp. Wow. I actually want to calculate that damage, but I'm presuming TDK will go into his T-Tar right here. He does have 3 turns of Trick Room, so he does have 3 turns of Trick Room, and if Shoka doesn't have anything to take Banded Edges, although it might not KO that Heatran from there. I'm gonna run the calcs. Heatran, let's just say a Scarf. Yeah, Stone Edge won't Oko Heatran. I didn't, because TDK doesn't have Rocks up. Those would have really helped in losing his Heatran turn 1 hurt. Oh, and the last is Kingdra. So I don't know, maybe TDK is gonna have to get TDK is gonna have to get crits here to win this game. And also, if he doesn't have enough Trick Room turns, and if his last is Dragonite, then I guess Shoka could also just save the last Mon that can KO the Dragonite, and waste the Trick Room turns as well, and just win the game that way. So T-Tar goes for the Stone Edge and clean KOs that Kingdra. The reason I was saying that is because I was thinking Shoka could maybe switch out his Kingdra and save that to outrage TDK's Dragonite, but TDK goes for the Stone Edge, and that just completely knocks out the Kingdra. Shoka does bring in the Heatran as I expected, and this should be able to take 1 Stone Edge. Now if TDK can get a crit here, that would be huge, because then he can KO the Heatran, and then I think he would be able to win. I think even if that Rotom is HP Ice, it won't be able to OHKO Dragonite from full, and I'm not sure how much Draco Meteor would do to the Rotom, but if he can win that situation. He goes for the Stone Edge, does not get a crit, and Heatran is able to go for the Earth Power. Now this does still leave some room for plays. I think Shoka should have definitely saved that king draw. So if TDK goes for this last Stone Edge and removes this Heatran, then Shoka could be in a situation, because if TDK's last is Dragonite, he can bring that in on an Infernape close combat. He can bring that in on a Rotom Hydro Pump, and then from there get that last kill and win. So I feel like as if Shoka could have played this better by keeping his king draw. So TDK has choice here. I think TDK has to go for Stone Edge. I can't see TDK going into his Dragonite and then killing off this Heatran and somehow winning. It seems a little unlikely, although it is possible. I guess that's what he's considering in these last seconds. He does have 30 seconds. He does go for the Stone Edge and hit the Heatran. And now I guess we'll have to see. Alright guys, I'm so sorry I got interrupted during the last turns of the game. But the T-Tar went for the Stone Edge to finish off the Heatran. And Shoka brought in his Infernape and went for the close combat as TDK decided to leave in his T-Tar, trying to catch Shoka on some prediction. As the T-Tar went down, then TDK brought in his Starmie and Hydro Pump that Infernape. And Shoka just brought in his Rotom and T-Bolted the Starmie to finish off this game. So, the concluding thoughts on the game, I thought that TDK, if he switched to his Starmie rather than leaving in his T-Tar at the very end, then he could have potentially won. If he doubled to T-Tar on the Shoka's switch to Rotom, then he might have been able to win the game, potentially. I think there would have been more predictions there, based on like going for the Dark Stab or Stone Edge or whatever, something like that. Pursuit or Crunch or Stone Edge, based on like what TDK thinks Shoka would do. Switch into Infernape or go for Hydro Pump, etc. But I think he still would have had a chance to win there. And I also think TDK played a little bit recklessly and aggressively in the first few turns and lost 2 Mons due to that, which could have helped him on later on in the game. So yeah, Shoka played this pretty well, and I presume ORAS will be next since TDK will be choosing the next gen. So yeah, we'll be back for the ORAS game. Alright guys, we're back for the ORAS OU game. TDK has brought a Sand Gardevoir team with a Jirachi, Gardevoir, and Latios, which is kind of interesting, as well as the Lando T-Tar and then a Keldeo to top it off. Whereas Shoka does have a nice team. It looks actually kind of black and whitish. An Alakazam offense team with that Skarm. This does look like a black and white team, oh my god. Has the Garchomp, Keldeo, Alakazam, offensive Mons, and then the Rotom, Skarmory, Heatran in the back. So, alright guys, I am so sorry, but I got interrupted. So, TDK led off with his Latios as Shoka led off with his Skarmory, and TDK actually switched out his Latios into his T-Tar as Shoka went for the spikes. So it kind of indicates that TDK did have some way to hit that 2-KO that Skarmory. And he actually went for the Banded Stone Edge as the Skarmory went for second spikes. So Shoka brought in his Keldeo on that Banded Stone Edge, and TDK went into his Latios as Shoka went for a hidden power of some sorts. And you saw from sand damage actually that the Keldeo got hit by that Latios first. Hit by the sand before the Latios, my bad. So that would mean that it is Scarf and faster than Latios, but looking at the damage, it did over 50%, so I'm thinking that is a modest choice Scarf Keldeo. So TDK decides to leave in his Latios and sack it to the second HP, Bug, Ice, Ghost. Because the reason I'm contemplating Bug or Ghost is that Shoka might have brought a black and white team, but by accident, but he actually probably Ice or something. So TDK brings in his Gardevoir on that Keldeo and goes for the Calm Mind while that's threatening. Now, I kind of doubt that this would be double Scarf. This could actually be... Oh, okay, another possibility I'm thinking, the Latios could be Earthquake, and then TDK might have run Naive instead of Hasty. Although I think Hasty is better on Latios. He might have chosen to run Naive so that he can... No, that doesn't make... I was thinking for Roost stalling Tornadus, but then you can get hit by Hurricanes, and you're not Roost stalling when you have an Earthquake Latios, because you're not running Roost, but I'm not too sure about that Keldeo actually now, but TDK does go for the Calm Mind on the switch to feature. Oh my god. Oh my goodness. Oh my freaking god. Oh my goodness gracious. So this is huge because this means that TDK can not only get this kill on the Heatran, but he can get a second kill with this Gardevoir. And oh shoot, this is looking threatening. He goes for the Focus Blast, and oh my god. That did so little. I would have expected that to Oko that Heatran. That is full on specially defensive. Oh my goodness. So, that is absolutely ridiculous. So, TDK is going to probably sub here again. I'm not sure if Shoka would want to switch expecting that sub. Or, I guess go for Stealth Rocks and then not worry about getting damage on the sub, knowing that he can break it with something else. But I think this Gardevoir will be able to get 2 kills. Now what I am worried about for TDK is that Keldeo. Keldeo on Shoka's side is extremely threatening to TDK's team. And TDK really only has his own Keldeo to combat it, and I'm looking at his build. It could be Scarf, it could be Specs. I am honestly not completely sure. I am leaning towards Scarf, unless the Jirachi or the Lando T is Scarf, in which case I would lean towards Specs. And so I'm thinking Specs, because I could easily see Lando or the Jirachi actually be Scarf. But Shoka goes for the taunt as Gardevoir, after the Gardevoir goes for the sub. So I think TDK would be able to Psyshock and kill off this Heatran. So I think Shoka just played it safe. He didn't really have too much else for the... He didn't have like Encore Zam or anything like that, anything weird like that. So he probably just wanted to... I guess he probably just wanted to stop his Gardevoir from trying to set up more Calm Minds. Perhaps 2... Okay, I'm gonna calc Gardevoirs versus Heatran, because it's possible that after 2 Calm Minds, Heatran would still not break the sub. So Heatran, oh, you specially defensive. And Lava Plume versus Split F +1 would do, oh, that's actually pretty good. Pretty good damage. I think that would break the sub even after a +1 and then a +2, yeah, for sure. So, TDK goes, oh yeah, he doesn't have Psyshock. So, TDK decides that he will not risk the Focus Blast miss, and goes for 2 Hyper Voices to take out the Heatran. I kind of disagree with it, because I feel like that extra hazard could play a bigger role in the long run, especially if TDK decides to Healing Wish this Gardevoir back up in the end game or something sources like that. It's just extra chip damage. I don't see why you would go for that, because you're basically guaranteeing that he'll get up Stealth Rocks. Whereas if you went for the Focus Blast, even if you missed 2 Focus Blasts and even if, let's say you missed the first Focus Blast, he gets up Rocks, then it's the same thing if you hit a second Focus Blast as if going for 2 Hyper Voices. But even if you miss that, he's not going to break your sub, and then you have a 3rd Focus Blast. And the chance of you not hitting 3 Focus Blasts in a row is, I think, so low that you shouldn't just basically guarantee that he can get up his Stealth Rocks. But TDK does go for the Hyper Voice as the Keldeo breaks its sub. And I think that was one of the bigger threats gone, but now that Alakazam and the Garchomp. Okay, also the Rotom. The Rotom is annoying to TDK, although, yeah, Rotom is annoying, and Skarm is kind of annoying, but easily the Garchomp and the Zam are the biggest threats to TDK right now. And I feel like that extra Stealth Rock will hurt TDK in the long run. I know defensively, he kind of needs his Scarf User. If that's Scarf Lando or Scarf Rachi, he needs that for that Zam. Or whatever his Scarf User is, he needs it for the Zam. But he also, if it's Scarf Healing Wish Jirachi, then he can't freely Healing Wish his Gardevoir without realizing that then he becomes a little more Alakazam weak, to the point where it could just sweep everything, provided it hits Focus Blast on T-Tar and stuff like that. Or that TDK doesn't have dual Scarfers. But, I'm thinking Shoka at this point is just gonna go for the safe Earthquake, but he could be aggressive, because TDK might want to save this Gardevoir to Healing Wish it up later, and Shoka might feel that he needs to make a play to come back. I mean, he is down in numbers. He has 4 monsters, TDK has 5, but I think overall Shoka, I find, is in the better position, just because he has all those hazards up, whereas TDK has none. And he also has these 2 offensive threats, but if this, I don't know, it's a hard choice for TDK, because if Shoka does predict TDK's Gardevoir switch nicely, it could become very troublesome, especially if like it's some SD set and then you can like declaw or outrage the Lando T or something like that. But I think TDK will go to his Lando. And yeah, he does go to his Lando right before I said that, right after I said that. But okay, Shoka does go for the Fire Fang, which is a good mid ground because it would have been able to kill that Gardevoir. And also hit the Jirachi. Although the chances of him bringing in Jirachi are kind of lower. I guess it also just guarantees us a little bit of damage on the Lando T, whereas Earthquake would have done nothing. And that way he can also get a little more information about the Lando's spread, something of the sort. If it's offensive, then he can try to tell if it's Scar. If he doesn't see leftovers, then he can kind of tell by the damage what else he might be. Some sort of thing, but that, this is an interesting choice for Shoka because he does have the Rotom and the Skarmory. But TDK, if this is his Rocker, then I think TDK is just safe to go for his Rocks. Oh, Swords Dance, that's a nice play to stop that Skarmory from coming in, and also forcing in the Alakazam to revenge this, because now Shoka can't just go into his Rotom so freely and then just take a +2 Stone Edge. He does hit the Stone Edge, which is nice for TDK. He hasn't missed a Stone Edge so far in this series, but Shoka does go into his Rotom, so he can probably tank a +2 Edge, and I kind of doubt Psychic would kill TDK from there, although if it is Megazam, it would kill, but TDK actually goes for the Stone Edge, and that does a clean 64%, but not as much as I was expecting actually, but that is pretty crucial damage on that Rotom, as Shoka finishes him off with the Hydro Pump. And, looking at it, I could see how much health is the T-Tar at, kind of depends on that. The T-Tar is at full health before hazards come into play, so if it brings in his T-Tar here, if he's bulky banned, he might be able to take a Hydro Pump and just go for a Stone Edge or something, although he does run the risk of Will-O-Wisp and things. But the reason I'm saying Garchomp is, the reason I'm saying Tyranitar is because it is the least useful against Garchomp and Alakazam. Oh, but Gardevoir is also fine now, because you can get a Hyper Voice, get the kill, and that's basically guaranteed kill here. Tyranitar doesn't get guaranteed kill, and then he can still maintain it as Healing Wish, as usable as Healing Wish later on. And if that's Scarf Jirachi, well, actually, if that's, considering that we did not see, the Lando was probably Stone Edge, probably Stealth Rock's Swords Dance, now that I think of it. So the Jirachi is most likely Scarf, as I was expecting, and the Keldeo would be Specs, I'm thinking. So Shoka is in a tough position here. I think TDK would go, actually I don't even think TDK does have to switch. He might, TDK might, yeah, I don't think TDK has to switch. He doesn't need this Gardevoir to Healing Wish up, because now he's broken all of Shoka's defensive mons, and he's just left against Garchomp and Alakazam, and all Gardevoir can do against them is possibly take a hit and then win. But Garchomp does go for the Earthquake, as TDK does leave in his Gardevoir, and now this is a little tricky. We saw Fire Fang from Shoka's Garchomp, so we might expect some sort of SD set, which is what I'm thinking. But if this is a Scarf Garchomp, then I think he pretty much just wins against TDK, unless TDK can go for like a... Okay, well, the thing is the Alakazam, that's the odd part, because if the Alakazam should be Mega, but if the Alakazam lacks... If the Alakazam does not Mega, it could also end up being Sash if this is a black and white team. But TDK does bring in the Keldeo on the Garchomp. I presume he's gonna go for the... I would say he would go for the Hydro Pump, although TDK may not want to risk missing. He may have the Ice move, but if this could be SD Yachi Garchomp, which is always a possibility. But if Icy Wind does to a KO Alakazam, then I could see TDK going for that Icy Wind, so let's just calc that, versus Alakazam. Now Alakazam does have pretty good Spadaf, so yeah, Icy Wind's not going to be a 2 KO on that Alakazam. I guess TDK could also go for Scald, but I feel as if TDK is going to do his best to not risk a Hydro Pump miss, but at the same time he also wants to minimize the number of Iron Head flinches he needs to get to win this game. So this is a little choice for TDK right here. Would he Hydro Pump, or would he Secret Sword even? I doubt it, but I want to Cal Jirachi's Iron Head versus the Alakazam. Choice Scarf. This is not okay. That is okay. Versus Alakazam. Yeah. So even if that's not Sash Alakazam, Jirachi's going to need one flinch on the Alakazam. Although I do expect Shadow Ball. This is from Life Orb Exam, so that Shadow Ball is not going to KO that Jirachi from full health. Now if the Jirachi does take the Rough Skin, okay, TDK does go for the Hydro Pump, as Garchomp goes for the Earthquake. So here I'm presuming TDK will go for the he'll go for the Hydro Pump again here, and if he misses, bring in his Jirachi. Let's see how much that Iron Head will do to the Garchomp. Let's just say offensive Stealth Rocks. And yeah, that Iron Head will be able to KO, but if he doesn't get the flinch on the Alakazam, and it's able to Shadow Ball combined with the Rough Skin and Hazard's damage, it should be able to kill, at least has a chance to kill the Jirachi, and then if he can hit the Focus Blast on the T-Tar, he could have won. Now I'm trying to think what would have happened if Shoka went into his Alakazam on the Keldeo. If he went into his Alakazam on the Keldeo, then TDK probably would have sacked his Tyranitar, and then gone to his Jirachi, and then from there, I think he could have just U-turned, and then the same thing would have happened. Although, yeah, I think the same thing would have happened. Now, if the Hydro Pump missed on the Alakazam, then in that case, okay, TDK goes for the Hydro Pump and KOs the Garchomp, so I think he wins here. But what I was saying, if he misses the Hydro Pump as Shoka switched to his Alakazam rather than staying in his Garchomp, I think he might have been in a slightly better position than if he left in his Garchomp on a Hydro Pump miss. But Shoka does bring in his Alakazam on the Keldeo, and I presume he's just going to go for the Psychic move. If this is substitute Alakazam and TDK misses a Hydro Pump, that would be pretty horrendous for TDK. Although the thing is, he should be able to tank one Shadow Ball from Alakazam. I calc to Life Orb Alakazam versus Jirachi, which is the strongest it can be, so without that, unless this is Sub-Calm Mind Zam, this has to be Sub-Calm Mind Zam if Shoka wants to win this, kind of pulling a TDK and revealing Sub-Calm Mind part of it, which was pretty insane if you're asking me. But I actually want to calc, I guess I'm not going to calc, I just want to see the Sun game. But I presume TDK will win it. Yeah, it does Mega Evolve and go. Oh my god. So that must have been a modest Alakazam. And this was not a black and white team. That would have been pretty funny if that was black and white, but it was Mega Zam. TDK crits the Hydro Pump. I don't think it would have mattered in the long run, because TDK probably had that Scarf Jirachi in the back to finish off the Alakazam, and that Alakazam was also probably modest, seeing that the Keldeo did outspeed it before the Mega Evolution speed kicked in, which would have been the next turn if the Alakazam didn't get crit. But TDK takes game 2 ORAS, and we'll be back for black and white. Alright guys, we're back for the black and white game. Now Shoka has once again brought Keldeo Alakazam in an actual black and white team, and he actually has an Amoonguss, and TDK also has an Amoonguss, which I found pretty interesting. And actually comparing the similarities of TDK and Shoka's team, both have Amoongusses, a Scizor for his Skarmory, Keldeo, Lando, and then TDK has a T-Tar rather than an Alakazam, as Shoka has they both have T-Tars, but you do have to remember that grass types can be put to sleep by Spore moves in black and white, so TDK's Amoonguss actually outspeeds the Amoonguss and goes for the Spore. Nowadays in ORAS, you'd usually see a Spore War in, oh my god, in ORAS, but TDK actually switches out into his T-Tar on that Amoonguss as it wakes up and goes for the Spore and burns the Lumberry on TDK. And in that sense, I think that TDK outspeeding the Amoonguss and going for the Spore was actually bad for him, because now I don't think he can KO this Amoonguss, so now that he's going to have to stack something to sleep, And he also revealed his T-Tar's set Lumberry, which could indicate Dragon Dance. I think that would indicate Dragon Dance, I'm not too sure. I don't see Lumberry T-Tar very often. But I think that TDK actually winning the speed tie early on was bad for him. But he goes, oh, this is Stealth Rocks, which is interesting. Stealth Rock alum. I guess for burn. Oh, we see a Fire Blast from the T-Tar on that Skarmory. Now, it is interesting to see that this Skarmory did outspeed the Tyranitar and also did not show leftovers. But it does go for the Roost as TDK goes for another Fire Blast and gets a lower roll that time. Less than 50%. The first time he got 55%, which looks like the max. But TDK realizes that this is not going to be a battle he'll win due to eventual misses and PP stalling with rolls, etc. So he brings in his Keldeo on the Skarmory. Now, if this is Brave Bird Skarmory, I presume it could take one hit and KO this Keldeo. But he might want to save that Skarmory because TDK does have the T-Tar, the Tarak, the Lando T, and the Scizor. Now, see, Skarmory is not the best Tarak answer because a +2 rack, especially with Life Orb, I think could KO that Skarmory, but ooh, this is... Skarmory is going to be annoying for TDK, and Shoka does have a very easy switch into his Keldeo with his Amoonguss. And Shoka does go into his Amoonguss as TDK stays into Scald and does not get the burn on this Amoonguss, and yeah. Looking at team matchup, at this point, I'm thinking that Shoka does have the advantage with his Skarmory and in this core. It is going to be hard for TDK to break, especially if that's not SD or Smackdown Lando T. And Shoka does again have the offensive presence of the Keldeo Alakazam, which kind of works well against TDK. TDK has Amoonguss Scizor to kind of combat that duo, but it could be pretty annoying. I think the biggest asset to TDK's team is a Terrakion, especially if it's Choice Banded or Swords Dance. It can really punch holes in Shoka's team, which is what he needs to do to soften up Shoka's cores, so that once he can remove one member, the rest of the team falls apart due to the weaknesses that are no longer covered by that lost member. Because I think how TDK is going to win it, but TDK goes into his T-Tar as Sleep Flutter to the Amoonguss, and I think here he has a little difficult choice. He doesn't really have many good Amoonguss switch-ins. His own Amoonguss would work, but is also a little bit passive, especially if Shoka pulls his own switch right here. Although, if TDK does go into his own Amoonguss, he can get off his own Spore, while not fearing that Shoka would Spore his Amoonguss, because he already has Sleep Fodder, but I feel like Amoonguss is a little passive, but he does go to his Amoonguss, as Shoka does pull the double, which I was fearing, into a T-Tar. T-Tar is fine, because looking at TDK's set, he probably had the only Stone Edge to hit the T-Tar, and T-Tar, especially if it's banded, can do well against Amoonguss. So that would be a pretty nice play. That was a pretty nice play by Shoka, I think. But if this is physically defensive Amoonguss, I'm sure it can take one banded hit, go for the Spore, and then switch out, get Regenerator, etc. But then he's more pressured by the Keldeo, especially with Burn and Sand, and that little Spike. So TDK goes into his T-Tar, as Shoka goes for those Stealth Rocks. I didn't consider that. I guess the Lando T would be Scarf then, or it could be SD. Rock Polish, Double Dance. I could see Double Dance Lando, but TDK does bring in the... Sorry about that. TDK does bring in the Tarak, which is, I think, easily the biggest threat to Shoka's team in terms of trying to wall it. Yeah, if TDK goes for okay, Shoka brings in his Keldeo, and TDK goes straight for the close combat. Ooh! So TDK was not playing any games there and went straight for the close combat, as Shoka, I guess trying to account for a potential SD or a potential Stone Edge, goes into his Keldeo, a more offensive answer, and ends up losing it. Now, considering that he did have Stealth Rock, Spike, and a Sand, that Amoonguss would be pressured by the Keldeo, although it might have been able to check it pretty decently. Shoka could continually set up spikes with his Skarmory, and I think eventually that Keldeo could have become a huge threat to TDK's team if Amoonguss went down, especially if it got burned. But TDK has another problem on his hand. Shoka has brought in his Alakazam, and if that Scizor is not Roost, this Alakazam is going to be a very, very big problem for TDK. I think it might end up turning down to Scarf Lando U-turn, forcing out his Alakazam, bring in the Terrakion, try to get a kill with a good prediction, and then sack another Mon to Alakazam. It might turn into that, but now there is the possibility that this is like a Pursuit Scizor, and somehow Shoka is unable to 2 KO that Scizor, then that could completely change the situation. But yeah, this Alakazam is easily looking like a big threat to TDK's team, and TDK still has to break that Skarmory Amoonguss, which is troubling him a lot. Although now he is more free to spam Stone Edge. So I think TDK is taking his time here to consider his options. Oh yeah, and also talk about the ORAS game while we wait. So the Jirachi was not actually Choice Scarf. It was Iron Head, Body Slam, Stealth Rocks, and either Wish or Healing Wish. I can't remember which. And the Keldeo was actually Modest Choice Scarf. So that Alakazam was not modest. It was actually timid. And I later learned that it was actually just standard Calm Mind Zam. So what could have happened at the end there if TDK did not crit the Zam with the Hydro Pump was that the Zam could have gone for the Calm Mind, and then if Keldeo missed, Keldeo didn't hit both the Hydro Pumps, I think Shadow Ball would have been able to OHKO Jirachi from the range it was at. Although, I'm not 100% sure on how much Spadef that Jirachi was running. And then from there, I think Shoka would win the game. But what Shoka could have done differently earlier was that when he went to his Skarmory on the Landorus' Swords Dance, instead he could have just gone directly to Rotom, and that way he could have saved that Skarmory, so that when he killed the Lando T with the Rotom's Hydro Pump and TDK brought in his Gardevoir, he could have sacked his Skarmory to that Gardevoir and kept his Rotom, which was around 40% health, which could at that point beat the Jirachi 1v1 and also take a Hydro Pump from Keldeo. So with that, if Shoka went for that method of like, if that game like pattern went down, then Shoka would have won the game without having to go for a Hydro Pump miss. But yeah, it's back to the black and white game. So, but go back to the black and white game. TDK goes into his Tyranitar as the Alakazam goes for the Psychic. I don't think TDK is trying to use this. He could use this T-Tar to pivot actually. He could go into his Lando T on a Focus Blast, and I think Shoka at this point in the game would be safe and go for the Focus Blast. Okay, what Shoka could do, what I could see Shoka doing, no, but if TDK stays in, he's likely going to go for the Pursuit. So I think TDK would go, Shoka would go for the Focus Blast, but TDK does bring in his Lando T. And oh my god, oh my freaking god, oh my goodness. That was an amazing play. I think Shoka just wins. Because now Lando T can only come back in one more time. And this Alakazam is just going to go ham on TDK's team. Oh my goodness. That was a huge play. An absolutely huge play. TDK wanted to save his T-Tar so that he would have to lose less mons to this Alakazam. But that was an insane play by Shoka. That was very well done. And TDK is in a really tough position now. He has to play his Scizor and the remaining health on his Lando really, really well if he wants to beat this Alakazam. And considering that most Alakazam are Sash, although I want to see that damage Alakazam, black and white, Alakazam, will you special attack or Sash, obviously, Lando T, will you Choice Scarf, Psychic, HP Psychic, are you kidding me? HP Psychic comes first before Psychic. Whoa, that did a lot of damage. 73, that had to be a really high roll, or it could be a rare Life Orb Zam. No, that has to be Sash. Life Orb Zam in black and white is a myth, but TDK U-turns on that Skarmory and goes into his Keldeo and goes for the Scald as Shoka brings in the Amoonguss. And this is looking really tough for TDK. The Stealth Rocks and the Spikes are definitely wearing down his team. And Shoka just has the Amoonguss Skarmory just sponging hits defensively, and Alakazam just pressuring TDK offensively so hard that this is looking really, really, really difficult for TDK to win. Hats off to him if he can, but TDK Oh, this is a tough play for him here. Now, he does already have the sleep fodder in his T-Tar. I presume that's also another reason why he wanted to save this T-Tar, so that this Amoonguss could not put another member to sleep. But he doesn't really have Stellar Amoonguss switches either. He could go to his Amoonguss again, but if Shoka pulls another switch, which would be insane. It would be insane, but if Shoka doubles on TDK switch to Amoonguss, then once again TDK's in the back seat, and that's going to be really hard for him. But TDK does go into his Amoonguss. He has very little options here, so that's a fine play, as Shoka just goes for the safe Giga Drain, which is also a perfectly fine play. Shoka has no real reason to predict, other than the fact that it'll probably push TDK so far back that it'll become immensely difficult for him to come back. But in there, I think Giga Drain was easily safe play, even though it was very predictable. He wouldn't want to lose a member prematurely and then start slipping up just because he tried to be overly aggressive, and that psychic predict was already really amazing. But TDK does go for the Spore as Shoka brings in his T-Tar, so both users have sacked their T-Tars to sleep after getting up their Stealth Rocks and basically setting up stand. I think TDK's T-Tar was the one that set up stand first, but sorry if you can hear any chair noises. Hopefully that's not going to be too much. And all of a sudden, if my commentary became quiet or slower, I seem to have lost my breath. I don't know why, but it's taking more effort for me to talk. So TDK is taking his time here, trying to consider what he should do against this Tyranitar. He can't just freely go back into his he can't go into his Chirac, because the thing is, Shoka has Skarmory, which I think is pretty fine against the Amoonguss, now that Shoka has sacked his T-Tar to sleep, and the Chirac can't do well against the Skarmory one-on-one. Now, the thing that Chirac does do well is that if it forces a switch, then it can do well, but Shoka makes a very nice play and goes into his Amoonguss rather than the Skarmory, because it too can also take on the Amoonguss, but it also takes on the Keldeo, which is pretty much the only thing TDK has to hit that Skarmory. And this is really well played by Shoka. I think he's going to win this series. He is clearly dominating in this position. Even though TDK has all 6 Mons, I think Shoka is easily in the upper hand. So TDK is going to pretty much lose his Keldeo to Stealth Rock, Spikes, and Sand. Especially if he switches right here, which he pretty much has to if he wants to actually do anything with his Keldeo, other than fish for a Scald Burn right here on the Amoonguss. This is really tough for TDK. And the only way I can see TDK winning this, if that is an SD Roost Scizor. If that is an SD Roost Scizor with enough, it's gonna require a lot of things, but if it's SD Roost Scizor, he can try Last Mon so that Shoka can't whirlwind the Scizor out, and if that Alakazam is not HP Fire, then he should be able to take it on 1v1, and if he can get up enough Swords Dances, I think he would be able to win the game. But TDK goes for the HP Fire and actually gets a crit, as Shoka goes for his own HP Fire and does not get that crit. So they're both around the same amount of health, but I feel Shoka is definitely more pressured at the moment. And Amoonguss, this does mean that Amoonguss can take on the Scizor basically, unless the Scizor somehow is able to OHKO that Amoonguss after Stealth Rocks with +2 Bug Bite or something. Yeah, it'd still be bulky enough to take on the rest of the team, but TDK pulls a switch into his Terrakion, as Shoka pulls a switch into his Skarmory, which can take on this Amoonguss pretty well as well. And I think that's a pretty nice play by TDK, because now if this is Banded Terrak, just looking at the damage, the way that Keldeo went down, I'm pretty confident this is Banded Terrak, and TDK goes for the close combat as the T-Tar actually reveals a Chople Berry, but still gets blown back by that close combat. And what this does mean is that Amoonguss can set up another Spore, and I think that could be different. That could be changing now. The thing is, Shoka has not really used his Lando T yet. It's mainly been his Amoonguss, his Skarmory, and his Alakazam that have been the driving forces in this game. So I think, ooh, this is tough. So yeah, TDK does sack the Keldeo. He can't sack his Alakazam so freely, because then that basically sacks one extra mon to the sleep. So he can't really afford to do that, especially as the sleep turns reset in Black and White. Oh my god, if a Pokemon is asleep in this game, it's basically gone from the game. Pretty much. So, TDK has not many options. If he goes Lando T, he basically condemns it to dying. And, but on the bright side, if he goes Lando T, Shoka's not going to bring in his Skarmory. I can tell you that. He's probably going to bring in his own Lando T on that U-turn, just so that the Tarak can't come in and then just click Stone Edge and get a kill. But, oh, I hope TDK picks his move soon. A timeout would be shame, but he does go into the Scizor. And just the way TDK has been playing this Scizor, I really doubt that it is a a Roost set. And if it is Roost, the thing is, if it is Roost, it can take on this Alakazam somewhat comfortably. It can't switch into Focus Blast. I'm pretty confident that TDK would not be that bulky, but he actually goes for the... Oh, that's pretty much game. TDK, that is HP Fire Zam. And this is pretty tough now because... Yeah, if TDK has to go into his Lando T, and Shoka can just switch out. And TDK's Lando T is going to go down. Yes, Lando T can't clean sweep Shoka's team from here, so he has to eventually switch or get knocked out. And then from there, the Hazards will knock out the Lando T, and Alakazam will win this game. And I am so sorry. I'm going to have to do a ton of editing to get this annoying stuff out. For some reason, Smogon Tour commentary does not like to go well with me because I always get interrupted, but he does U-turn out as... Shoka does bring in the Amoonguss, which I find a little curious. Oh, but he does not need it too much more since the Keldeo is down. But it would have been Spore Pressure, I think. But then again, TDK's Amoonguss does outspeed Shoka's Amoonguss, so it's kind of iffy, and this Lando T is again very useful, as TDK does not have any ground resists. I feel like, so TDK does sack his Lando T, as Shoka goes for the Earthquake. And what is TDK gonna do here? I don't see. I think he pretty much just loses. I'm trying to think of any creative sets that could win this game. Can't really think of anything that would win TDK this game. He would have to like crit everything and then have enough bulk on Amoonguss to take a Psychic from Alakazam after a ton of residual somehow. Like, I don't see how TDK can win this game at this point. I think this is pretty much over. Because, yeah, at this point, especially that Lando T is Scarf, then he can just spam Earthquake until it goes to sleep, and then Shoka can just play with his Skarmory and Alakazam to win the game. I don't know. Okay, what could happen? The thing is, sleep turns do reset in Black and White, which means that TDK would have to dodge several Focus Blasts in a row, I think, from Shoka's end to win this game. I think that's... But I mean... yeah, if sleep turns didn't reset, then TDK would have had a chance for a Focus Blast miss, but since TDK's T-Tar is pretty much fast asleep and done in this game, I think Shoka doesn't even have to worry too much about Focus Blast missing, unless he misses several Focus Blasts in a row. But the thing is since sleep turns do reset, Shoka is always safe to switch out his Alakazam against TDK. Now, what could happen? Let's say TDK spores this Lando T, and then it somehow becomes a situation where it's T-Tar versus the Alakazam. Sorry, T-Tar versus the Alakazam. And let's just say if TDK still has his Amoonguss somehow, and it's T-Tar versus Alakazam, and Shoka switches out his Alakazam, and TDK makes an aggressive prediction to expect Shoka to switch, and switches into his Terrakion. And I think at that point he could get a kill. He would have to have this Lando T asleep, for sure. But I think he would be able to get a kill in that situation. In that case, he could kind of, the thing is, he would still need that same Focus Blast miss from the Alakazam. But that way he could force Shoka to go for the Focus Blast, although T-Tar is taking Stealth Rocks plus Spikes, which makes this very troublesome for TDK. I don't see how TDK is going to win this, but Shoka is definitely thinking this through. He has the time to do so, and he wants to make sure that he makes the safest plays to win this game. So Shoka is taking his time here. I guess he would be. I think he wants to Skarmory around just to sponge hits from the Amoonguss, which the Lando T cannot do so well. If he switches out his Lando T into that Skarmory and gets that Sport, and then he doesn't do much. If Shoka leaves in his Skarmory and TDK switches out into Terrakion, then I think he kind of gets a kill. Although Shoka can easily bring in his Lando T again, sponge a hit, go for Earthquake, proceed with Scarf. But at the same time, it kind of makes Shoka more strained against, a little more strained to switch stuff in so he can bring in his Lando T and his Alakazam. But at this point, I don't see how Shoka would lose, based on what's developed so far in the game. You could see some really crazy plays or even a choke. But, Shoka finally makes a move, and he does switch in his Skarmory as... Oh my god. Holy. That was ridiculous. Oh my god. That was an insane play by TDK. So TDK goes for the double switch. Shoka brings in his Skarmory, and this is another kill for TDK. Oh my goodness. Now, I think what TDK's reasoning is that he has to play off a choke from Shoka. I think he has to play off a choke from Shoka. That's what he was doing by going into his Terrakion. I think that has to be a play that's going off of a choke from Shoka. But if this is Quick Attack Terrakion, if this is Quick Attack Terrakion, he could win this game. So Shoka brings in his Lando T on the Stone Edge. He realizes that he can't have so many sacks as TDK. TDK actually goes for the close combat, which does a ton to that Lando T. And I guess he would not want to risk a Stone Edge miss, but that did so much damage to that Lando T. But holy, yeah. So if TDK sacks his T-Tar right here, as he does, and brings back in his Amoonguss, I think Shoka would want to save his Skarmory. How is TDK gonna win this? I still don't see it. I still don't see how he'll win this game. But, because even if that's Quick Attack Terrakion, Shoka can save his Skarmory to take those Quick Attacks. I'm thinking if TDK needed to go for... that's the game. I think TDK needed to go for the Stone Edge and crit this Lando T if he wanted to win this game. But Shoka goes for his own Earthquake and crits that Amoonguss, which pretty much, that loses the game for TDK 100%, although I think he still would have lost. As long as he left his Lando T in. TDK went for the Spore, let's say. Let's say he didn't go for the Spore, let's say he went for the Giga Drain and crit that Lando T. And Shoka could still just bring in his Alakazam and then just finish off the game. But yeah, TDK does go for that Quick Attack, but it's not going to be enough to kill that Lando T. And Shoka still had that Skarmory in the back to win the game. So, that was a really intense game. That double from TDK really caught me by surprise, but it ended up not mattering in the end. But it was still an insane play. I really like that one. I did think TDK's team choice was a little bit poor in this one, just because he was so weak to Skarmory, which I think Shoka loves to bring Skarmory. I think I wouldn't bring a team so weak to Skarmory without hazard removal. And also, it is weak to Alakazam, which I don't like either. But easily the most important turn of the game was the turn Shoka went for the Psychic as TDK switched out his T-Tar into the Lando T, because that put that Lando T on a turn timer of how many times it could come in and force out that Alakazam a few turns. And that is pretty much, I think, the driving reason why Shoka was able to clean off this game. without letting TDK's Terrakion overpower Shoka's team to the point where he could win with enough mons over Shoka. But yeah, I think TDK had to go for a Sword Edge crit at the very end. But this was really well played by both players. Definitely an exciting series. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please like and or comment below. I will be uploading more tour games such as OLT, including my own games sometime soon, hopefully. I'll also be doing more Smogon Tour videos like this one. And in the near future, I will be doing Grand Slam playoff games as well as SPL. So, and I do, once I have a little more time and I'm not doing just tournament coverage, I will go back to doing Showdown Lives and Teenies Paninis. So if you're interested in that, please check out my other videos and subscribe so you can see my other videos with get notifications basically, and it helps support me. So that's it, and I'll see you guys later.